Well, hello. Well, I guess we can get this stream started slowly. And welcome to the full face cam, I guess. I managed to tweak my webcam so it looks semi-okay. It's not as blurry as it used to be. Cool. So I do see we have a couple of viewers here, which is pretty good. Well, I guess, yeah, this is, welcome to this rather special, I would call this a special stream, because we're going to be doing something very interesting today. We're going to be focusing a lot on AWS CLI, one tool which doesn't get a lot of attention, or at least it doesn't get enough attention as it should have, right? So let me show you how can you get started with AWS CLI. How can you how can you configure it, some of the basics. We'll cover some of the more advanced things, some of the really cool things that I think are very important for people to know how to do. We'll cover CLI 2.0, the second version, some of its benefits, how does it kind of work, how do you install it, and how do you basically, well, use it, some of the really neat features that came with it. I'm going to also check a couple of third-party pieces of software or open source software, which kind of supercharges, for the lack of a better word, your CLI usage, right? So we keep talking about, oh, thank you, Guy Howdy, and thank you for that t-shirt. Yeah, absolutely. Some people may recognize it. So here's the thing, right? A lot of people, well, actually, let me show you the most important things about today. Today's stream is brought to you by a very old Linux distribution, or not even a, well, it's not an old Linux distro, but it's an old laptop. I'm going to be talking about command line, and what better place to run a command line instead of tools than on something that, well, takes command line much better than it takes a browser. So welcome to my very old laptop I use here. It's a Dell D610. It looks like that. It's a laptop that was made back in 2005, I believe. This laptop was created, so I was still in high school, and I remember back then, actually was reading an article today about it. It's like, the sales pitch of it was like, oh, the Dell's new ultra light and ultra thin laptop. I don't think it's ultra light or ultra thin, maybe by those standards, yeah, but not today. So why this laptop? Well, let me show you. So, fetch. This laptop runs Debian, relatively new Debian, like it runs at 8.3, but it has only a gig and a half of RAM. It has a 2 gigahertz M CPU, so single core 32-bit CPU, and the CPU usually runs at around 800 megahertz on like standby. So doing a lot of things in the web browser can be a pain. So what we try to do right now is I'm going to try to basically use this little thing as my CLI machine, right? And I'm actually able to do most of my job here on this machine. And I'm going to show you how, right? So I think it's much better to use for CLI something like this. Also, by the way, the terminal is Xterm and the shell is Window Maker. And yeah, one more thing, it's actually the part of the right screen that you see blank. It's just some way I output my signal through VGA on my capture card. It just freaks it out. But yeah, so I hope this is large enough for you to see. I hope the chat says that it's not too tiny. The text, I unfortunately cannot get it bigger in this terminal. But if that's the problem, we can try to do something later on. Okay, so let's talk about the CLI, right? Let's mention what's the CLI and basically what is that. So the AWS CLI is our command line utility or the command line interface that helps you interact with AWS or AWS resources through said command line, right? So it gives you basically, it's kind of a wrapper for our API. So you don't directly invoke APIs through SDKs, but it's basically an SDK wrapped in a more friendly command line utility. So I would say all the things, I cannot say for 100%, but I would say, I would be pretty confident to say all the things that you can do on the web interface, you can do it through the CLI, right? So a lot of different things you can do, and there's a lot of different things to help you along do it, right? So today we're going to be maybe launching an EC2 instance, maybe we're going to be maybe doing some CloudFormation stuff, or we'll see where this takes us, right? I have a couple of notes that I'm going to follow along just so I don't get lost, but in general, we're going to try to, well, have some fun on this thing. Okay, so what's the first thing, right? Why would you use a CLI? Of course, most likely you will not use an old laptop like I do, but the CLI gives you the ability to do this, right? So if you have an old laptop, actually try to run this using FVWM, which is an even older, I wouldn't call it a desktop environment. It's like a window manager. But I had some issues running it. I had Slackware installed here before. And it was just a pain to set up properly, to display properly. So Window Maker makes it very 90s. So you wouldn't do it on this, but you could do it on like remote instances, right? You want to run some AWS tasks that are quick, fast, and you just want to you want to launch an instance, you want to terminate an instance, you want to create a bucket, you want to create a DynamoDB table. Absolutely, you should do those things through infrastructure as code, so through CloudFormation, through CDK, through Terraform, to Pluma, to whatever tool you would like to use. And let's say some sort of production grade infrastructure, right? So somehow if you want to define it as code, you can do it. But let's say you want to quickly create something, or you want to quickly delete a user, quickly create a bucket, delete the bucket, empty a bucket, whole different things. you can do it through the CLI, right? You can just run a single command. You can do it all through here. And I think it's not an enough talk tool for people out there. I think people should really invest more time in getting to know the CLI, because if you had a chance to play around with those some more workshops, a lot of the times you create resources, you actually just do it through a single one-line CLI command that does this all for you, right? So it can get pretty good. Like, I'm a fan of the command line. I'm a fan of the terminal. I like if I can do things through the command line, especially like if you wanna, like, I have my Firefox open here, like that, and I double click it, and it works, but it's not the fastest things in the world, right? So this is, I guess, an older version of Firefox, but it kind of struggles from time to time, right? Especially on this CPU. See, I kind of bottleneck the CPU as soon as I open this thing, so it's not the smoothest of experiences. Let's try to make this better, right? First things first, we need to install CLI, right? So there's two versions of the CLI, and I'm going to be mentioning both of them right now. I'm going to start with the number one, because most people use CLI version 1, and I'm just going to be showing us CLI version 2 as we go along, as it can get interesting later on. So how to install the CLI? Well, the CLI actually depends on Python. So this is kind of one of the slight problems with CLI version 1, that it really depends on a specific Python installation to have it locally. So currently, for example, there's no longer a support for Python 2.6 and 3.3, right? So you have to have something newer, 2.7 or 3.4. On this old Debian version, I could the latest one I could get is I think 3.4. So Python, right? Oh, 2.7. Sorry, Python 3. Right, 3.4. Right. So I have these versions that support AWS CLI, so I can easily use it in this case. But for example, I could not use a CLI version 2, because CLI version 2, as far as I know, there is no 32-bit version of it, so problems, right? But yeah, how to install it? Well, because it's a Python thing, I would like to say that you just do pip 3 install AWS CLI user, right? So this will install AWS, not like that. User. So this will actually install AWS CLI locally in my home directory, right? I define it as user, so I do not need to have permissions to do anything. I don't need to do sudo, and hopefully when you do pip, you should not use sudo for your own packages. So I have it installed already, but basically it will go through these things and it will install. So you have to have Python, one of the two versions of Python. Well, one more than 3.3 or 2.6. You have to have pip installed on Debian systems. It's usually Python 3 -pip. And yeah, that's it. Basically, you have to have those things. It will install the requirements it needs. You know, so I think PyAML and Bodo 3 it requires, PySock, a whole other different things it requires, but it will handle that for you. You don't have to worry about that. Now, once you have that installed, the first thing you have to do now, you have to configure it, right? AWS configure, right? So you can do this, AWS -- version. This will confirm that you have AWS CLI installed and the version you have, right? Right now I have 1.18.32. It was the latest one as of today, as I have installed this one today. And also, if you do AWS and there's nothing on it, like you get no command found, make sure, especially if you're doing it through pip, that you have the following path installed, set up in your path, right? So home directory, local, and bin. Now this applies to Linux, but it's for macOS it should be relatively the same, or for Windows it should be, well, much different, right? So, but yeah, also regarding that, the things I do here mostly apply to Windows, right, as well. So there may be some different things when it comes to setting environment variables, but in general it should be the same thing, right? You shouldn't have to worry about compatibility between the two versions, because they are pretty much compatible. All right, so local bin in your path, it's there, we can do it. First thing you need to do, AWS configure, right? If you type AWS configure, it will prompt you to first enter your access key ID. What's an access key ID, Darko? Well, happy you asked. So let's go here. Let's go. This is the only thing we're gonna have to use our web console for. And it's basically, we need to get your access and secret keys for my user, right? So going to your IAM console, as you can see, this is taking its sweet time. But basically for a user that has a set of privileges, I need to add these keys to it, or to the command line utility, so they will be basically available for my user or my desktop. So when I run AWS commands locally, it will basically execute under this user here, right? So this one has administrator access, and hopefully you cannot see my credentials. Now this is all going live, but no, yes, you can see my access key, but not the secret key. So I have my access key and my secret key already set up, so I don't have to do that. But basically you have two keys. You have an access key and you have a secret key, right? What you do is paste your access key here, bam. Then it asks you, please paste your secret key, well, bam. Select a region. I choose EU West 1, but let me, because I'm close to Frankfurt, let me do it in Frankfurt. EU Central 1. Like that. And then the default auth was JSON. Yeah, JSON is fine. Thank you, Ian. Yeah, the window manager is reminiscent of, well, the early 90s, right? But it works. It's actually quite, once you get used to it, especially if you want to do a lot of things just in the command line, it's sufficient, right? And it only, well, Firefox consumes most of my RAM, but you know, I have like 500 megs being used now, and if I try, I could go lower. I believe when I ran FVWM, I had like 23 megs of RAM usage, so ridiculous. Okay, so we have installed, we have set up AWS CLI, and the first command you run, at least this is what I do, when I try to see if my AWS CLI works, is depending on what kind of permissions you have, but AWS S3 LS, right? So what this will do, it will list out all the S3 buckets you have in your account, right? So if this works, well, bam, right? So it would list all of my buckets that I have currently under my account. Or in what I used to do in the back, before is AWS EC2, right. So now it will just describe all the instances I have set up. It's just a whole bunch of things. I don't have to worry about it, right? Cool. We have our CLI setup. That's pretty cool. Now let's talk about outputs. You've seen me when I did configuration. I have set up like a output type. I set it to JSON. And by the way, all of these configurations are actually stored under your home directory under AWS. So you will see here config and credentials. Config is basically configuration setup, and the credentials is just your, yeah, credentials, right? So they're actually stored in plain text there, but they're inside of your home directory, and well, hopefully nobody should have access to those. But if I do like vim AWS .aws actually directory config, it will show me, yeah, my default profile, region, and my output, right? But let's say I want to do something here right now. No, please, no, not execute. Cancel. Right. Let's say I want to do another profile, right? Actually, I can do also this. I just configure ls, not ls, list. Right. List, please. It will show me, I have a profile, basically it will just show a default profile and the location of those things, etc., etc. So pretty simple. Now, let me create a new profile. How can I do that? Well, there might be a better way, but what I do here is I open up this file, copy this, go here, paste, call it Darko. I'll use a different region in this case, AWS EU West 1. And the output will be text, right? Now, one thing I have to do right now, and I haven't done it before, I need to copy my credentials. So you get a chance to look at my face again while I hide my screen. So credentials, like that. Wow, I'm wondering, does this show up on stream? No, good. Darko. I'm basically, in this case, I'm going to be just using the same credentials as I did before. I'm just copying them to a new profile, basically adding a new entry inside of my credentials file, the same way you have it currently, just copy paste it and change a little within the brackets. It should change the the credentials you use. Now, why are profiles important? Well, the way you define which AWS account you interact with, or which region you interact with, or a whole bunch of things, is through profiles. Let's say I'm a DevOps person or DevOps engineer or whatever you would like to call it. I am this person that manages multiple AWS accounts. What I can do is, through the use of profiles, I can easily switch on which account I'm running a command on. So if I do, how can I do AWS? Let's see, EC2, describe instances, right? Output text, right? So will this show us something? Yeah. So it will show a whole bunch of instances. Right? I'm not going to go through this. And you can see here, on this example, it actually shows us EU central instances. So by default, it will pick up the default profile, right? But if I do the same thing, so text, and do a profile, Darko, which is the new profile I've created, if I do bam this and try to stop it. Oh, okay, to region. Region EU West 1. Come on, will you work? Yeah. So if I stop it now, you will actually see that it picked up a different profile, EU West 1. So it will show me instances from that region, right? So you can have multiple accounts and multiple basically profiles you use for different access policies, completely different AWS accounts, or even like, different use cases. Maybe you have a specific account that just does backups, or account that, you usually don't have a full-blown administrator account like I do have here, but you have a specific account for a specific use. And with those, you kind of switch those profiles. For example, if I would be working with different accounts, I would label those accounts as specific profiles and have specific access keys connected to those things as well. So it's pretty cool. Let's have a look at this. I have an EC2 instance somewhere running. Yeah, let's have a look. Let's look at outputs. So I mentioned outputs. There's 3 types of outputs we can have: JSON, which it just outputs in JSON; text, right, just plain text; and also outputs as a table. There's also a YAML output, but YAML output is only available within the CLI version 2. So if I do AWS EC2, let me do this. I like to do this. Now, this is a best practice that I say. Always define a region, just so you are sure you know which region you're running this in. So even though I have a region defined within my configuration file, my profile, I want to make sure that I use a region here. EU central 1, EC2, describe instances, and let's do instance ID, and I have an instance ID here, 0i01 E4B7 E0772F3327. Let's see, does that typing work now? Cool. So I have gotten output here, right? It's a whole bunch of things that basically, it's just all the information on my instance, from architecture, image ID, all the things I have here, IP addresses, security groups, all the things you have information on an EC2 instance, you get it from this. Now that's the normal JSON output. Now I can use this JSON file later on in JQ and whatever I would like to pass it along and do something with it. But let's have a look, right? We can also do things such as I can define the output as text, right? So text will, believe it or not, it will just output this as text. It's not the prettiest thing in the world, but it's basically just pure text with some information on it. It could be better. Let me see if I can do this in a wider screen. Does this look better? It's pure text. You potentially would like to parse this through, just lines. It's basically per line. If I would, reduce the size of my text here, maybe it looks better. But it's not something you would be using on a day-to-day job unless you're outputting a single value or something super simple. But yeah, let's go back to something more useful or something more visual. If you select output table, it will output on a very nice table, right? So you get actually something very readable. If you want to have information on the instance, you can see who's the owner, who's the reservation. It's very visual. If you need a glance, hey, how does my instance that I'm doing this right now look? I want some additional information, etc., etc. So this is a really nice way to show it straight in the terminal. So the way we sometimes work with the CLI is we modify which output flag we use. By default, most people just use JSON, but if you want something nicer, table is here as well. Okay, let's talk about something called filters, right? So I need to have a look at this because there's an example of this. It's relatively complex, but let's talk about filters. Filters is kind of a way to filter out your output. So if I would do AWS EC2, let's follow the best practices, region EC2 describe instances, right? Even if I would do like this, right? This would describe AWS EC2. No, region is not EC2. EU central 1 EC2 describe instances, right? So it will output all the instances, right? All the different things and all the whole lot of information on all the instances within my EU central region, which is just too much for us in this case. With filters, we can actually use filters to filter those things, and based off of certain parameters, certain, like for example tags, certain values, it will show us those things, right? So let's for example, I wanna describe all the instances that have a specific tag, right? So if I do AWS, let's actually do this. AWS region EU central 1 EC2 describe instances. Now to make this nicer, I'm gonna just jump down a line with the backslash, and I'm gonna add in the next line. So filters, right? Let's set up filters. Filters. What we do here is not window shader. Window is open this filters. Let's do it. So like this, name equals tag key, right? We're specifying a tag key, and the value of the tag key is what is application, right? So I have a tag called application. Application, yes, awesome. And I want to, the value of that tag is tag value. Now this looks very kind of sideways because you're defining tags within tags. It's kind of, you define a key value store in a key value store. So yeah, but this is how it's done, right? So key value, and the value is demo, right? So if I do this now, it should just give me information on all of the instances that have these keys set up, right? So if I would do this, no parameter values. Awesome. So now again, it will spit out a lot of these instances, but much less, right? All the instances that have a tag called application, well, tag with the name of application and the value of the demo, right? And I can do a lot of different things. Filters. I can filter also on some other things, such as whole lot of things that it has, right? You'll see later on when we want to do like describe AMI images, we can describe things such as who's the owner of an AMI image through filters, right? Filters are very powerful, especially if you want to get some information. And to tie into the filter aspect, let's talk about something called queries, right? So with a query, we're able to basically set some specific output, right? So instead of us just showing this, I can do grep maybe, right? I can grep things, right? I can just grep whatever. What can I find here that's maybe useful? Owner, right? Owner ID, and this will basically just show me all the lines with that. But it's messy, right? How can we just output certain things here? How can we output, for example, I want to output all the public-facing DNS names of my instances. How can I do that through the CLI? Well, we can run a query, right? So if I do this, okay, I'll keep this the same, and I'll do this and just queries, right? Query, and the query will be basically a query within that JSON object, right? With this The JSON object that spits out basically a query within that. I'm able to specify a specific value. So you don't have to pipe it to JQ, right? You can just pass it on like this. So one of the things people used to do is like pipe the output from an AWS describe command to JQ, which is a command line utility for doing things with JSON, and then just work with that. But instead of doing that, let's just completely avoid JQ and use the built-in query feature. So reservations. So reservation is basically the top level of this object which we receive, right? Reservations. I'll just use the all ones and select instances. So in this case, we choose all of them, but we just have one. Network dot. Let's do network interfaces like that. Dot. So. So Tion, okay, good. Dot public name, right? So what this query will do is basically it should, if I typed it correctly, it should spit out the public DNS names of all of these instances which have the tag application with the value of demo, right? So let's see if this works. And wabam, right? So we get a list. Of course, it's output in JSON, but we get a list of all the instance, basically, endpoints for these instances, the DNS endpoints. Basically, what we said here is association and public DNS names, right, for all the interfaces. How can you get more things in this case? Let's just have a look, right? So in those filters, I actually could have just selected, come on, show me. All right, so I could have took any value that comes out of here, right? You know, so from private IP addresses, maybe INIs or security groups or attachment IDs. So basically, I can do the same things. You just have to change the way you form your query, and you get that information. Pretty cool, pretty neat. I think it's a very powerful tool that we can use, right? On top of that, if you use something like called JMES, right? So it's kind of a query language for JSON. You can combine both the filter and query within the same line by doing this. Let me actually just go here in the back one and let's change this. So let me have a look at my little code here. So we just changed, well, actually, let's do this. I'll go one above, delete that, and go here, instances, and then insert. We do this. Tags. We're going to look for tags in this case, and the key has to be application, and the values, actually, did I do it correctly? Yeah, key equals value, then I do and value equals demo, right? So this is kind of a single line version of what things they did before. Just put a little dot here, and it takes all of the instances with this thing, and hopefully this works right now. I did not close something. Application. Aha, right. So back. I put a little ampersand here that I don't need. So do this should get us the same, right? So we have went away from doing filters. We just did it all through a query. It can get a bit complex, but you can make this very complicated queries within CLI. But it's pretty useful if you wanna build your things out like this. So really cool. Okay, let's move on to something else. One of the things that people forget a lot of times when we talk about the CLI is you can actually input a lot of data into the CLI. So it's not just me typing on a command in AWS EC2 describe or whatnot, right? You can also create things from, like you can pipe things into or input things into the CLI and create some of those things, right? So for example, I have a little file here on the CLI JSON. I have a file here that sets parameters for my DynamoDB table. So I create the DynamoDB table from this, right? Hopefully I did it all good, right? So this is basically a JSON file that contains, you know, my index definition, my attribute definitions, my what are they called, the read write capacity units, etc., etc. So all the things you would do kind of when creating a DynamoDB here. So what I can do here is AWS Dynamo. Do I have that command region? Yes. No, I don't. So last example built into AWS. So is last example built? Yes, absolutely. So everything you see here is completely vanilla CLI, right? I have not added anything to it. It's just the filters, the queries. It's all built into the CLI. Just works like that. So pretty cool, right? So yes, yeah, absolutely. So the queries are actually it's actually called JMS. The JMS part. Let me have a look here. If you would. So it's a query, basically query language for JSON, and you can play around with this on this site, where you can kind of try to find your things and play around, like have a little play field where you can test your queries on it as well. So pretty cool. Okay, so let me try to see if I can have that command. DynamoDB. I don't have it here. Okay, let's try to create it. AWS, nope. AWS region, EU, central 1, DynamoDB, create. I believe it's create, but if you don't know how your command goes, just click help or type in help, and you will say here create table, right? We want to find a create table, right? It's a man file. Okay, DynamoDB create table. You can again do help, and it will give you the help for the create table thing, right? But I'm gonna actually pass it on some files, right? So one of the parameters you can pass on to a CloudFormation, to a CLI command is this thing called CLI input JSON, right? And what you do is you pick up a file from disk, and my file name is here is DynamoDB -table.json, right? If I would do this, there you go. So it's picked up all the configuration values from my JSON file into my create DynamoDB table API call or a CLI call here. And what it will do, it will actually create this DynamoDB table the way I want it to, right? So, doing this through the browser is sometimes a pain, but let's see if this works okay. How do you know structure of JSON skeleton? I'm getting to that, Mr. Pentraxel. Give me a moment. We'll get to that. I just want to show you how this looks. There's a very neat and easy way out to do that. So yeah, I have my table here. It's created and all that stuff. So pretty cool, right? I just did it from a single line like this. I could have also passed all of those parameters here, but that would just take too much time. Basically, I just need to have this. I need to create this little file with all of these, this skeleton basically, right, of my JSON. Speaking of skeletons, quit please. How do we create those skeletons? How do we go about it? Actually, it's built into the CLI that you can actually generate skeletons. So let's say I want to launch an EC2 instance, right? So I can do AWS region EU central 1 and then EC2 and then run instances and then just do a whole bunch of other things on it, AMI ID, VPC, network parameters such as do I set my public address to true, instance profile, whatever. But I can do it also through CLI. And instead of me just rummaging the internet and trying to find out how does my CLI look, I can also do this. How is it? I forgot the command name, the exact command name. Let's go to help. And the exact command name should be, come on. See all of those parameters you can set. Here you go. Generate CLI skeleton. Generate CLI skeleton. So if I do this, generate. if I do this into my ec2.json, I pipe this. Basically, I'm going to pipe the output of my command into a text file or a JSON file. And that JSON file will contain the entire skeleton that you need to launch an EC2 instance through the command line. Right? So it has all of these little things that you can use. Now, you don't need all of them, right? You need some of them, or you need to add, you know, well, the first things you need to set up image ID, right? Or instance type, or I think the only thing you need is to set up an image ID. Everything else should be fine. You can just remove literally everything else. You need instance type and image ID, and that's it, right? So the best way to learn Vim is to install Nano. I started, how long was it? 10 years ago with a bunch of guys from AT&T. And I had a colleague of mine. He comes from the old school. He uses Corn shell and all those things. And Corn shell in itself had only Vim key movement within the shell, and I had no idea how to use Vim. And it was a mission to learn Vim for me. But now I'm a big fan. And the way to use Vim is just to literally use it. You just have to make yourself to use it. It will suck for a while, but you will get there. Okay, there's keyboard covers. Actually, there's a game for Vim. It's like a Vim game where you actually move a character with the Vim keys, and you can move faster if you know all the macros, etc. So it kind of helps you. You can Google that and find it out. But yeah, back to this. So this file. Let's actually create an instance from this. But we need a few more things, right? We need an image ID. So I want to set an image ID, right? So I want to make sure that I have a proper AMI. Image ID is basically which AMI we'll be using. The instance type I will set to. I'm not going to be M5 large. I'm going to be frugal and say T3 large, right? Cool. And the thing is, most of the other things in this case, I can just literally remove, right? So I can take this, remove it. I'm going to do this. I'm going to just literally leave all the defaults except for one thing. I'm gonna instance profile needs to be an ARN. I'm gonna set up an instance profile. I'm gonna do this. I need to set up a network interface. I want to give it a public IP address. I'm gonna do this, and literally everything else I can just Control F, and do that, and say wabam. And I'm missing something here. Yes, I'm missing that, and what do I need? I need this and this and that. Cool. So basically this is all I need to launch an EC2 instance with CLI with this skeleton file, right? But I am gonna need some additional things here, right? So I'm gonna need my image ID. I'm gonna need my ARN. So how do we go about that? Let's be smart about this. Let's say Firefox died on me. I want to use the CLI for this, right? Let's go all in. So there is a command that I can run for image IDs. And now this command is actually something that I have to pick up because it's a long ass command and I don't want to type it up by myself. And I have actually, why use Vim? Ooh, that's a religious question. It's just faster, right? Once you learn how to use it, it gets so much faster. You know, from jumping between words to editing a text file. Sometimes it's so much easier. Opposed to Nano. So I'm not a Nano user. Nano is just a bit. It's more. Yeah. Well, absolutely. Nano is not on every Linux distribution, but if I remember correctly, Nano doesn't have support for macros and doing a lot of those keyboard commands. You know, Vim has this, how they call it, normal mode, where you can kind of move along the file with commands and with key presses. So I don't know. It's just a preference, right? I cannot say that. I can say that I'm much faster using Vim, but it's not something that maybe everybody is. So, no. So going back, I want to get a file out of here called commands.md. So I have this big ass command. Now this big ass command will basically give us the latest Amazon 2 AMI, right? So I could have done this myself. I could have, went through, see, it uses filters. It uses a query. Basically, it will get me, it's able to run a query and reverse sort images by create. So, but I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to copy paste this here, output text. I'm just going to region EC EU Central 1. And come on, awesome. So we got the output. We basically got the latest AMI ID just out of the CLI. So if I just do this and no, there's no alt tabs. It's just Vim. So my EC2 JSON, I could do this and paste. Awesome. Cool. So one more thing we need to find out is we need to get our ARN of our instance profile, right? So there's a command, AWS region, EU Central 1. It's not so important because we're going to be using IAM. List instance profiles. I'm gonna cheese it here. I'm gonna kind of cheat and just use grep because I already know how my command should, how my profile should look. So I'm just going to use grep, and this is just a horrible way to do it. I could have formed like a proper query here or a filter or something like that, but I just didn't, because I know that my role is instance profile is this one. I just wanted to get this entire thing, so I don't have to type it out. Again, copy this, Vim EC2, or actually my EC2, and in the ARN section, I'm just going to paste this thing. Cool. Now that's it. So my EC2, this file should be ready now for us to launch an instance. So we have an instance profile, we have an image ID, which AMI we're going to be using, we have an instance size, and I'm going to associate a public IP address to it, right? Cool. Save out, and then I have the run instances command, which I'm just going to not type out. Yeah, run instances CLI input. So it's the same thing as before. It's basically setting a CLI input file, and I'm not going to use EC2 launch.json. I'm going to actually use it's called my EC2.json, my EC2, yeah, that's fine. Also, speaking of Vim, if you have Z shell like I do, or my ZSH, you can have Vim mode within the Z shell. So I can basically just back here and go move forward with W and B, and insert myself and do something Vim style commands on the command line as well. So pretty useful if you have a long ass a command that you want to kind of just maybe replace some things with it. Awesome. So this now, hopefully, yeah, it has launched my EC2 instance here. So you can see that instance has been launched, and the most important thing out of this is I need to find an instance ID. So image ID, and maybe my next switch just, yeah, I'm absolutely fine to do Vim. If you guys want me to talk about Vim and how I use Vim, let's do it. I'm a big fan of Vim. I have Vim key bindings in my browser, so once you get used to that, it's just, as I said, religious. Custom plugins too. Okay, there's a few plugins I use. I try to have it as vanilla as possible, but there are a few of them I use. No, where's my instance ID? Oh, it's the last thing. So I have my instance here, and one of the things we can do here is, again, go to the same thing, region, EU Central 1, describe instances, and then instance ID, and paste it on this, and describe, see, EC2. But it should give me the same thing, right? But I should also have, I think, an instance state in this case, somewhere. And yeah, it doesn't matter, right? So one of the things I'm also going to show as part of the CLI, this is not just a, did I pass it? Okay, it's running. Okay, so it should show if the instance is running or not. Now, one of the other things I really want to show here is it's not strictly part of the CLI, but it is, right? So we have a service called Systems Manager. So Systems Manager is this kind of a jack of all trades tool that does a lot of different things, and I want to show it here in the browser just to be visual. But it does a lot of things, right? It's from patching to operations to installing packages to a thing called Session Manager, right? So a Session Manager is basically gives you the ability to SSH into an EC2 instance through a browser, right? You can just go in the browser, click on it, you get a shell. If it's a Linux, you get a bash shell or a shell. If it's Windows, you get a PowerShell shell. Well, that's a lot of shells. You can do it right through here, Session Manager. It's pretty neat, right? It's a relatively new feature. Your instance has to have basically has to be able to accept a session from your has to have a proper instance profile attached to it. That's why I attached that instance profile to my EC2 instance. Fan of PowerShell. PowerShell is the first proper shell language I've used. I was a Windows person before. I'm not sure if you can see, I have a Windows tattoo on my hand, right? So I used to be a Windows person, and I used to use PowerShell. It was the best thing because before PowerShell, we only had a VB script, which is, let's say, a friend of mine told me it's as flexible as a brick. So yeah. Mr. Pentraxel asked, can you SSH from terminal via SSM? Ha, you're getting to my point right now, right? So instead of using SSM through my browser, let's be super slick and do it through our CLI, right? So AWS region EU Central 1. Oh wait, I need my instance ID, right? Like that. AWS region EU Central 1 SSM. Start session and then -- target, and I can just paste this thing if I can just grab it properly and paste, and hopefully starting session with session ID. Wabam, right? So who am I? I'm an SSM user. I have now connected through the power of the CLI to my EC2 instance. So mind you, I have not created an SSH key. My user has no SSH access to this, right? So there's no authorized keys. I have not used the PEM key. This instance doesn't even have a CLI, a key pair attached to it, right? So there's no way to connect this through SSH. So this is emulating SSH. It actually uses the CLI and it goes through HTTPS and all of those things. So it actually gives you basically the same thing. So it drops into shell, but if I just do bash, it will drop me into bash, and it's an EC2 instance. How can I sudo yum y install htop, right? It does all of those things. If I do htop, it should show me an EC2 instance. See, it has 8 gigs of RAM. It's not my laptop, right? And I managed to do it. So Pentraxil asks, does it also keep track of historical commands? Yes, actually, you're able to export those commands out to CloudTrail, and you can also put them into S3 buckets, so you're actually able to see what commands have been run. Basically, once you close down this session, it gets pushed back into S3, and you should see all of those commands. So pretty really cool. No need to distribute users across different systems. It just kind of works out of the box as long as you have a EC2 instance profile attached to your instance. That gives you the ability to do this. Cool. So we have this thing now, and yeah, this kind of works. It's pretty cool, and I guess we can work with the EC2 instance now, right? We can do whatever we can. I think there's AWS CLI installed already, so AWS version, and it's an older version, yeah, 1.16, because it uses an old version of Python, blah blah blah. But we're gonna be completely growing this instance, and I don't care really about it. We can exit. That's fine. Again, exit, and cool. So basically, it has finished the session. We're good. Now, what time is it actually? Oh, almost an hour. I have a few more things I want to cover, so please bear with me. One of the things I want to cover is actually CLI version 2, right? So it's very important that we talk about CLI version 2 because there are a few interesting features that has come out within this within the version 2.0, right? And some pretty neat features, right? The first feature, and kind of one of the killer things that people will use this thing for, is SSO integration. So single sign-on integration exists for EC2, for the CLI version 2. One more thing, I'm going to be demoing this off a virtual machine, so I'm running this on an AWS EC2 instance. So this is an EC2 instance running in the cloud, right? So it's you can see here, it's not this one that we launched right now. It's one I created, well, this morning basically, and just because I couldn't find a 32-bit version of the CLI version 2. So yeah. So only love for Debian and AWS, yeah, it's pretty cool. Hey, thought AWS history mode super helpful. Yeah, absolutely. So you can set up the CLI history as. I have not talked about the configuration options, but there's a slew of configuration options that you can do on CLI. You know, from for example, in version 2, it has a pager built in, so it will use like less or more as a pager. Any other application you pass it on. You can specify, your configuration options as well, and a whole different things that you can do within the CLI. But CLI history is a great tool because it keeps all the all the history local on your laptop. So pretty cool. So so CLI version 2, right? So there's one big thing also regarding CLI version 2. Let me just have a look here. I want to see here. Yeah. So CLI version 2 is, oh, goodbye, Mr. Petrexel. Yeah, it's going to be on YouTube. I'm going to upload it after I'm done here. With a couple of edits, I'm going to remove the waiting parts. But, so version 2. Great thing about it, it does no longer require a specific version of Python. So it's a standalone binary that you can just run. You literally don't have to have Python installed at all. It will work. So it's cool from that perspective. And how do you install it? Basically, I did this. There's a wget. Who is there? See, you download this CLI version 2 file. So let me actually just find the command here. Yeah, you download the zip file basically to this. You unzip it, and there's an install file. If you go to AWS to this directory, there's a install script that installs it for you. That's it. You don't have to word no pip, nothing. Just it does all of that for you. And if I would do the AWS - version, it would show me that I have 2.06, right? Yeah, that's a thank you, Mr. GBeer7. It's that link if anybody wants to check it out. It's for Linux. There's different ways to do it on Windows and macOS. Yeah, so I have AWS CLI installed. Now, one of the first things people kind of go for when it comes to the CLI version 2, especially if you have single sign-on. Now, single sign-on is this Amazon's feature that allows, well, single sign-on. So you can have external authentication methods that you can use to basically single sign-on to AWS. So what I did in my case, maybe I can show this to you if I open it. Does that work? Yeah, that works. If I go here and search for SSO, I have a single sign-on setup that basically I created a special user called Darko-SSO that I give some administrative permissions, right? So I have a user called Darko-SSO, and this person is attached to basically an administrator account, right? I'm using a primary email, so this is not an IAM user. This is a specific SSO user. It belongs to the administrators group. And one of the things that you can do here is basically if you go here and AWS configure SSO, right? It allows you to configure single sign-on. Well, one of the things you have to set up here is basically this URL, right? So if I would copy it like that, and then, one of the first things on version 2, you have, you're able to basically automatically fill your, it will suggest options. So it has found here, it has found the thing here on my basically on which SSO URL I have here on my database account. So because it's configured already, so it's able to do that. Region, I'm just going to use EU Central 1, right? And yeah, so it's already set up, right? So it's administrator access. It's going to use that access format. CLI region, I'm going to use EU Central 1. Just doesn't care, and I'm gonna use the name here, admin, right? Or I'm gonna set up SSO. So just to give it a shorter name. Cool. So now if I do this AWS S3LS profile SSO, it's going to use my single sign-on profile to do this, right? If I would go to AWS, there's no credentials files, right? So there's no, if I would do AWS STS, how do you do that? Help, there's some get thing. You can get the get color and that, yeah. AWS STS get STS get color identity, right? Unable to profile SSO, right? So it will show me basically which profile I'm using, but there's no credential set, nothing. It just goes through. Yes, Mr. Gbeer, there's no secret key setup here at all. So yeah, that's one thing, right? So single sign-on. Again, not maybe useful for everybody. Not everybody uses SSO, but it's a really neat feature to do it. One thing I really need to show here is wizards, right? So you remember me setting up a DynamoDB table with a whole lot of different things, you know, like passing in that CLI JSON file, etc., or doing it all manually. One thing you can do on AWS CLI version 2 is you can do AWS DynamoDB wizard new table. Well, bam, enter the name of the table, CLI v2 table, right? Enter the name of the primary key. I'll just set ID. I'm gonna use a number here because why not? I will not add a sort key, and I want to be provisioned. I'm gonna 5 and 5. I will just use the default, and that's it. Oh, sorry. Profile, right? SSO. What did I name it? CLI v2 table, right? Again, ID. Number, no sort key, provisioned, 5, default, well, bam. Now, we have created our DynamoDB table from the command line by using this wizard. Pretty cool, right? Super great and super useful. AWS, let's try again a little bit. Profile, SSO, DynamoDB, list. Can I do the list tables? Yeah, so yeah, it shows me listables, and you can see here, unlike version 2, which just outputs to the screen, this one outputs to a pager, right? It has outputted to less, and I can basically just open this output immediately here and do something with it, right? So it's really cool. You can pass it on to Vim, for example. Okay, that's kind of a like. CLI version 2.0 has also some breaking changes, you know, something like a binary blobs when you pass your files. There's a whole list of breaking changes that changed from version 1 to version 2. But the big things are SSO. After this install v2, how does it keep updates of CLI? Okay, so you have to update your thing manually, unfortunately, at this point. Because currently we have 2 versions, so version 2 is not available through pip. You have to manually download it. So currently we have to do, basically you have to install the file automatically. So I don't believe there's an update command for the CLI for itself. So you would have to do it yourself for version 2. For version 1, because it's managed through pip, you can just pip upgrade. But yeah, there's wizards, right? There's single sign-on, and there's also auto prompts, right? So you can, if I would do this, right? AWS profile SSO. Let's create a user, right? Create a user. I can just use the flag called CLI auto prompt, and this will basically prompt me for all the things. Test darko CLI, basically path or permission boundary or tag list, blah blah blah. It will just display me a CLI command. I can run it as well. So pretty useful if you want to get in touch with this. Now, before I go, that's kind of CLI version 2. Before I go, I want to show you one more tool that's not CLI. Well, it's CLI, sorry, but it's not an AWS native tool. It's called AWS Shell. So it is made by us. It's a shell. Basically, it's an integrated shell for AWS. So it's kind of like a CLI shell. So if you do AWS Shell, like this is running on my laptop right now, it will take me to a shell where I can do a lot of different things, right? So Yeah, it's a pretty neat tool. There's another one called AWS, kind of very similar, right? It's also kind of supercharged AWS CLI. So I have not had a chance to play with it yet, but somewhere in the future. So if I do EC2, there you go. Describe instances, right? No, let's do instances, and then instance IDs, and then basically what I can do is pick any instance which it finds here, and yeah, it should output things, hopefully. Come on, takes a moment or so, even though it's a 800 megahertz CPU, right? There you go, right? You have this thing here where you can kind of work on it, but oh my god, it has Vim keys. You can do Vim keys. Wow, right? So yeah, I also felt like putting this in front of anything. Yeah, I agree. But you can have Vim keys, or for the Mac people there, you can do Emacs. Sorry, for Emacs people, you can do Emacs keys as well. So, but yeah, so I'm a big fan of this. It works really cool, right? So Dynamo, DB, list, tables, and then basically all of them, right? So it will show you all of those things. Pretty cool thing, especially it can be really cool. Yeah, college syntax is very nice. It kind of shows this very cool thing. Again, if you ever find yourself with an old laptop such as this, or a limited system where you can just use the CLI, let's say you have to work from a EC2 instance just to connect your SSH to it, you cannot access it through the browser or whatnot, you can do these things from a lot of the CLI tools, right? And I'm gonna be doing similar things to this. Maybe do like a smaller chunk videos and push it into YouTube. We're working on a YouTube channel. It's currently not live yet, so a couple of my colleagues and I are working on a YouTube channel. We're gonna put little chunks of what we do there as well. So once again, thank you very much for joining. For new people here, as I see a few new people, I'm doing my streams twice a week, so on Tuesdays and Thursdays every week, and it's around the same time, so it's 4 o'clock Central European time. So yeah, Mr. G Beer asks, what machine are you using today? So this one running on right now. So this is a Dell D610, right? Yeah, 3 p.m. UK. So this machine is a Dell. I have it somewhere here. Yeah, it's this machine. So it's a Dell 610 D610. It's a very old machine. It's from 2005. So if you do NeoFetch, you should be able to see that it's a Pentium Mobility Radeon X300. So it's an old system. I just use it for this. I wanted to use. I have an old Mac G3. I wanted to use that one, but it's a bit complicated to get like shell running on it. So it's not. I don't have a OS 10 installed on it. I have OS 9. But yeah, maybe one day. Yeah, Debian, absolutely an older version, but it runs. I must say, it will bring any machine up from the dead. So cool. Thank you very much, guys. Let me know if you're interested in any further streams. Please do reach out to me through social media or on Twitch or whatever you find me. Where you find me, I'll be back here on Thursday, most likely at the same time. So I have no idea what topic will be on Thursday, so I have to think about that. But feel free to recommend something. Once again, Full Face here. Thank you very much, and I hope you enjoyed this one. And I will be seeing you in a couple days. Bye bye.